Well, I think there are two dimensions to this. One is certainly a consumption pattern that we often associate with Western lifestyles, and that certainly is very heavy in terms of its footprint. But developing countries are actually beginning at another end of the challenge. They have hundreds of millions of people who live in poverty, people who do not have even access to clean water. The priority setting in developing nations today is very much focused, and this is something we in the United Nations have supported with the Millennium Development Goals, focused around poverty alleviation and livelihood opportunities for those people who do not have shelter, do not have access to clean water. The focus of many governments has been to deal with those issues as a priority. What I think the environmental knowledge base that we today have and the environmental science base has shown that we do not have the luxury of following perhaps the path that many nations have followed, where you first develop economically almost with one eye closed on your environmental footprint and later on restore your environment. We have reached a point where, as I said earlier on, environmental change is happening on a systemic level. We are reaching tipping points in many different contexts where the path to economic and sustainable economic growth is increasingly premised also on an environmental asset building approach. Economics and environment, or environmental sustainability and economic development, even in developing countries, are now inextricably linked, and you will see that also in terms of the domestic debates, whether in India, in China, in parts of Africa, in South America, environmental issues, environmental degradation, pollution is causing great harm to people. And if you today look at, for example, pollution in China, hundreds of thousands of people a year are documented to die from air pollution. This is a price of development that no one wants. And this is where I believe we today have a different view of how we can reconcile environmental investments or a cleaner development strategy without losing our economic development possibilities. And there is another dimension to this. I think for a long time, environmental protection, as it has been called, is viewed as a tax on development. If you take climate change is actually providing whole new markets, whole new technology innovation drives that will allow economies, developing economies also, to enter at a far later stage of a technology or a product cycle and capture elements of the global market. Today, some of the largest solar, photovoltaic and wind power producers are actually in India and China. It's an opportunity also for development. And I think the other aspect that is increasingly realized, that environmental pollution is a very wasteful economic process, and that the efficiencies that environmental awareness brings to the economic development process is actually an asset in terms of development. But to make those connections has been something that we have been slow to make, both in the environmental community but also in the community of development economists.